Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. Happy Friday, it's May 2nd. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. A book festival happening this weekend in Fresno may just be the spark you need for that book you've been wanting to write.
My most ardent goal is that the reader wants to turn the page.
Coming up, we'll speak with Bakersfield native and award-winning author Pam Muñoz Ryan. But first, these news headlines. Former Vice President Kamala Harris has used a high-profile speech in San Francisco this week to criticize President Donald Trump. Sagar Meghani with the Associated Press reports on Harris's most extensive public remarks since leaving office in January.
Former Vice President Kamala Harris is sharply criticizing President Trump after he marked 100 days in office. Harris says instead of an administration working to advance America's highest ideals,
we are witnessing the wholesale abandonment of those ideals.
The speech in San Francisco marked Harris's most extensive public remarks since Trump beat her in November. She's urging Americans to fight back against an administration that thinks if it can make some people afraid, it will chill others too.
But what they're overlooking, what they have overlooked, is that fear is not the only thing that's contagious. Courage is contagious.
She did not address her future, but has not ruled out either running for California governor or for president again.
That was Sagar Meghani with the Associated Press. Union workers at UC Merced held a one-day strike on Thursday. Custodian, food service, and landscaping employees joined International May Day actions, which recognize workers and their labor. The strike came just hours after University of California officials delivered a final offer over the union's contract. It includes gradual raises for the next 5 years. Hilda Gutierrez is a senior custodian at UC Merced. She says what the UC's offering is not enough.
We have to get overtime if there's a possibility for us to work overtime just because we don't make enough.
If the union does not accept the UC's offer, leaders say they could continue to strike. When Tulare Lake refilled 2 years ago in the middle of Kings County, 2 prisons narrowly avoided dangerous flooding. As KVPR's Carrie Klein reports, a state audit released on Thursday now argues those prisons were not prepared for flooding or evacuation.
The audit was conducted by the Independent Office of the Inspector General. The authors argued that 3 days is reasonable to respond to a natural disaster like an earthquake, wildfire, or flood, but they found that most of the state's prisons would be unable to evacuate that quickly. That includes Corcoran State Prison and the nearby Substance Abuse Treatment Facility, which combined house around 8,000 inmates. After the floods in 2023, officials from both prisons put together an emergency plan. They estimated evacuating could take as much as 11 to 14 days. The audit said few prisons had evacuation procedures in place and warned that natural disasters could put inmate lives at risk. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
New reporting from the Fresno Bee says that programs and services in the Fresno area could be losing roughly $45 million due to federal funding cuts or freezes. That's due to continued efforts by the Department of Government Efficiency to cut funding to government agencies. The department's headed by billionaire Elon Musk, who was appointed to lead the office by President Trump. The local cuts could hit programs in areas like public health, education, and immigration services. California's population has increased for the second year in a row, according to state officials. They estimate the population rose 1% last year over the previous year. The rise is slowly reversing a trend of population decline that started during the COVID-19 pandemic. The decline was also a popular talking point for conservatives who criticized the state's high cost of living and taxes. Officials say the slow increase is due in part to rising birth rates, which are outpacing the number of people dying.
Only a few days left before the annual KVPR wine and craft beer tasting on the San Joaquin River. Bring some friends and join us this Sunday, May 4th, 3:30 till 6:30 for a wonderful afternoon of wine, beer, food, and music. It's a perfect day to fill your glass, grab a chair, and enjoy the scenic view, all while supporting the news and programs you enjoy on KVPR. Tickets on sale now at kvpr.org/wine.
And now to our main story. The San Joaquin Valley Bookfest is taking place this Saturday. This is the second year of the literary event. It brings together local authors and poets for a day-long event of readings and literature. California Poet Laureate Lee Herrick will be there, as will former Fresno Poet Laureate Joseph Rios and author Mas Masamoto, among others. The San Joaquin Valley Bookfest is a free, family-friendly event and includes children's authors, like Bakersfield native Pam Muñoz Ryan. She's authored over 40 books, mostly for young adults and children, exploring themes like family, culture, identity, and overcoming adversity. Notable titles include Esperanza Rising, Echo, Becoming Naomi Leon, Writing Freedom, and many more. Pam's received numerous awards for her writing, and she's the 2026 U.S. nominee for the International Hans Christian Andersen Award. I was able to catch Pam before the San Joaquin Valley Bookfest to discuss her latest book, El Niño, and her writing process. Pam starts us off by explaining how her upbringing in the Valley has influenced her writing.
Certainly, growing up in the San Joaquin Valley has affected the setting of some of my stories. Esperanza Rising is based on my grandmother's immigration from Aguascalientes, Mexico to Arvin, California to Giorgio Farms. So, you'll find a lot of tule fog and dust storms and acres of produce fields. So certainly, I grew up with all of that around me, and that's influenced my writing.
And the setting, that's one of my favorite childhood books, I have to say. So I was so over the moon to get to speak to you.
Nice.
Yeah. And I love, the book specifically does tell the story of a Mexican girl whose family immigrates to the Central Valley and starts a new life. You mentioned your grandmother. What else sort of inspired you to tell that story?
Well, that story, first of all, Esperanza Rising is celebrating its 25th anniversary in print this year.
Oh,
so way back in the day, it was just, it was a story that sort of, her story was very dramatic, and it was, had all of the elements for a lot of drama as far as looking at it from a writer's perspective. It had a lot of elements that were appealing to me. And it was a personal story. It parallels her immigration story. It's not precisely her story, but it's very close.
And what about the young adult children's book audience works for you?
It's interesting because it's taken me a long time to figure this out, because I've done books across the spectrum. I've done picture books for the very young. I've done early readers. I've done picture books for older readers, what you would think of as a storybook. And I've done my novels. And I moved across town in Bakersfield the summer before fifth grade. And all of a sudden I didn't fit in. I didn't know anybody. I was the new kid at school. I was the new kid on the block. And until then, I hadn't really discovered books and reading, but I discovered the small branch library in East Bakersfield. And I think I was escaping and sort of coping with, what I saw as at that time as my social inadequacies through books. And also they took me anywhere. They took me anywhere I wanted to be, other than, Bakersfield in the summer, 107 degrees outside. And that little library was blessedly air conditioned. So it became very appealing to me to ride my bike there, fill my bike basket up with books, and take them home and read them. So looking back on it, I find it really interesting that I now primarily write for the age that I was when books made the most profound difference in my life.
And you have a new book, El Niño, that's about to come out in just a few days. Now, that story is centered around a boy named Kai, whose sister has been missing. And you sort of play with this dynamic of myth and reality, right?
It's a very California book. Way back in the day, first of all, I lived near the Pacific Ocean in North San Diego County, and I've always wanted to write a book about an underwater realm. And I remembered at one time when I was researching that book on California, researching the story of how California got its name. And so takes the mythology of how California got its name, and that's explained in detail in the author's note. And I adapted my own origin myth. So that's what the underwater realm, the mythology of the book is based on. But the book is also a contemporary story about a young boy who's a swimmer, his family has had a loss, and it's how they all cope with their grief. And it's also about, where our sadness and our sorrow goes when we grieve. And I created this place called the Library of Despair and Sorrow. And it's a place where your grief and your sadness can rest, if only just for one moment. And so that's sort of the very overarching story. I have the myth, I have the underwater world, but I have the contemporary story, which is the main story, and the myth are sort of intertwined. And there comes a point in El Nino where my main character, has to battles with the mythology and reality.
Now, you've written more than 40 books, and I should say, for those who can't see, you've got a bookshelf of books behind you, which I presume are mostly yours.
They're all mine, yes.
Incredible. And that
the top shelf that you're seeing, those are all foreign editions. Okay. Many of those are foreign editions in different languages, yeah.
So I've always wondered, with prolific writers like yourself, where does the inspiration come from? I know that's a cliche question, but I'm curious, Are you grappling with themes that you're exploring, or are you writing with your audience in mind, with stories and lessons you want to impart to them? How do you balance your own inspiration with what you're trying to tell others?
Well, first of all, I really set out to write a good story, and I don't really ever intend, what I do subconsciously, I don't really ever recognize until after the fact. But my most ardent goal is that the reader wants to turn the page. And that's what I remember most about when I was the age that books made the biggest difference in my life, is that they were so well written that I was hungry to finish. And that's what I want for my readers.
And when you're producing so many stories, are you quite disciplined with your writing schedule? Like, how do you manage your time?
Yeah, well, if I'm really in the throes of writing and finishing a novel and I'm on deadlines, my deadlines are far out. Because I'm 3 and 4 years between novels, but I get up early in the morning and I write until, I can sit at my desk on and off for a number of hours and then, get some exercise. But I'm pretty dedicated, revisiting the manuscript. I'm a recursive writer, so I start in a scene and I write that scene and I go back and revisit it the next day and inch it forward and rewrite it, and then go back the next day to the beginning and go back to the beginning. So I'm always threading all of those, whatever themes develop as I'm writing, I'm rethreading it to make sure that I carry it through the book. I don't know. I think if you talk to 100 different writers, you'd get 100 different premises of how they approach a book.
Now, the San Joaquin Valley Bookfest is happening tomorrow, and this is a family-friendly event. What do you hope the children and young adults who are there get out of your reading and your time there?
Well, I'm really hoping that people will come out. I think it should be a really interesting and fun day based around books. And I have to say that I think it's a testament to the community that they would make a festival such as this a priority. I know that a lot of volunteer hours have gone into it to make it really appealing in a bookstore. And I think it'll be a really fun day. And I'm really proud of the San Joaquin Valley Book Festival committee for, approaching such a big task.
Yes, a lot of great authors will be there, including yourself. Author Pam Muñoz Ryan, thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Happy to be here.
The San Joaquin Valley Bookfest is a free community event. It takes place this Saturday at Fresno City College at 8:30 a.m. and runs until 5:30 p.m. You can find the full details, including the schedule of events, at sjvbookfest.org. And that's today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Planet Money helps you understand the economy. We find the people at the center of the story.
Garbage in New York, that was like a controlled substance.
We show you how money influences everything.
Tell me what you like by telling me how you spend your money.
And we dig until we get answers.
I had a bad feeling you were going to bring that up.
Planet Money finds out. All you have to do is listen. The Planet Money Podcast from NPR.